Okay, good morning. Welcome to Quarterly. I'm Ted Bo Davis. I'm the president of the board. We're happy to welcome you today. We've got a packed agenda. Welcome to everyone online. So we'll call to order at 9:33. Is there any public comment this morning? Any new library directors or Charity? Or you? Yes?
I think I should stand up because this is my last meeting. I'm retired. Sue Luskin, Freshwood Library.
Well, congratulations on your retirement. Very, very nice. Good. Charity?
I'm Charity Gordo, and I'm the executive director of the Range Public Library. I've been there since about August, but this is my first month.
Welcome aboard. Anybody else? Yes.
I'm Caitlin Dillon. I'm from Freshwood. I've been there for about 8 years, but now that Sue's retired,
Congratulations. One more? Yes.
Chicago Heights Library. I was the director of Richmond Park for 8 years with the new library construction. All the hard work is done, so now I'm back home at Chicago Heights.
Anybody else? Any library staff that wants to introduce themselves? Yes, you look like you do.
I was at State South Chicago Heights. I'm now at the Baltimore Library. I just started Monday, so just a different seat.
Congratulations. Anybody else? Awesome. Okay, so we need to approve the September quarterly meeting minutes. Can I have a motion to do that? Thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion or corrections on those minutes? Okay, all in favor? Okay. So next,
I'm sorry.
David, did you move?
I moved.
Oh, yeah, Ben.
Ben. Okay.
You got it?
Yeah. I'm just gonna hold up.
Okay, moving on. We're going to clip along because, as I said, we've got a full agenda. So I'm going to move back here. I feel kind of far away, so if I'm not talking loud enough, just let me know. It's okay. So the next thing we're going to be talking about is not this. See, Aaron, this is why you should do this one. Okay, is the strategic planning process. Today is an update. The strategic planning committee is myself, Julie, Jamie, who's not here today, and Aaron. So we've been working on this project, as you know, for quite some time. Let's see. So we issued an RFP April 9th, 2018. At that time, we evaluated 12 proposals. You've heard this before. And we selected Consulting Within Reach to head our strategic planning process. They've been great. We had 2 membership meetings in August that were open to the membership. We interviewed SWAN staff and the SWAN board also in August. And then there was a series of individual library directors interviews at the same time. And then there were interviews as part of an environmental scan. That is to say that we interviewed stakeholders within our industry, such as Cersei Dynex, other consortial leaders, that sort of thing. And then there was a membership survey that went out via email. So the first part of the process, when we really got through all of that, was to look at our identity, mission, and vision. We had that presentation from CWR in September. They gave a strategic plan presentation on November 1st, which was the draft of the strategic plan. During board meetings in September and November, the SWAN board took some time to really dig deep into that and make some suggestions and changes and make sure that it reflected all of the work that had been done so far. And then in November, Aaron and the management team have been working on a tactical plan. The tactical plan is sort of the to-do list part of the strategic plan that outlines what our next steps will be. So in this timeline that you've seen before, where we are right now is obviously right there. So today you're getting an update. Really, we're just going to talk about some definitions that are used within your packet and hit some of the high points of what we've decided so far. The next step will be a presentation at the board meeting on December 21st of the tactical plan, that is to say those next steps. We will adopt the plan formally on the 25th of January, and then there will be a committee of the whole meeting on February 5th at which we will present in depth the entire plan. Okay, so in your packets, you have a very detailed document that outlines the many steps and the many parts of the plan so far. What we wanted to do today is just talk about some of the language that's used in the plan, in case it's unfamiliar, and also hit, as I say, some of the high points. So the first part of the, sorry,
Keep going.
Okay, no, you're good. So the first things we looked at were identity, mission, and vision. And this language is probably familiar to you because you use it in your own libraries. The identity is sort of the who we are. The mission is defining the problem that we're trying to solve. Sorry.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. Okay.
What we're going to do. And the vision is what is our solution? How are we going to do it? Also in this plan, we talk a lot about strategic objectives, rationale, markers, and guiding principles. This terminology might be less familiar. It's somewhat specific to this plan. But strategic objectives, those are our goals. That's what we're trying to do. The rationale, that is, why are we doing this? The markers, those are sort of the mile markers along the way. How are we going to know that we're making progress towards a successful completion of our plan? And then, of course, the guiding principles, what's the right path for us to follow to get where we're trying to go? So I'm sure you saw those terms used over and over again in the packet. So the first thing we looked at was the identity, mission, and vision statement. SWAN already had a mission statement, it already had a vision statement. They were both very simple. So we took some time to look at each one of these and try to define exactly what we wanted them to say. The identity is pretty straightforward. If you will, I'll read it. SWAN provides resources and services to member libraries and the constituencies they serve, and is governed as a representative democracy of elected board members who represent the entire membership. Decision-making is driven on the patron experience, patron rights, and security. As I say, it's a pretty straightforward statement that outlines who we are. We did have some discussion. One of the questions that we talked about was, what are patron rights? What is security? Patron rights are things like privacy. Security is things like the security of our systems. Looking at the mission statement, so we had a mission statement. It was only one sentence. It was fairly simple. And when we looked at it, in regards to what we heard back from all of you, was that nowhere in our mission statement was there a mention of the word patron or patron experience. And that felt like a huge omission to us. So we've reworked the mission statement to include the patron experience because I think we can all agree that that's critically important. So what we had before, the second sentence, that's our old mission statement. And then when you add that new first sentence, that's our new mission statement. And then in the vision statement, again, this was very, very simple. It was something like, we will be excellent, or we will, something like that. So it wasn't very complex. So we worked this out into something, again, that mentions the patron experience and more thoroughly explores what we're trying to do, both in the plan and as an organization. Does anybody have any questions on these? Comments? Do you like them? Okay. And then finally, we've come up with the 6 objectives of the plan, and this is really the goals, the core goals of the plan. Kind of walk through them quickly. If you have any questions, be sure to let us know. So the first objective is develop a shared and accurate diagnosis of member dissatisfaction around the existing ILS and OPAC. The ILS obviously is central to SWAN, and there has been some dissatisfaction with it. I think what's important to look at here is that shared diagnosis piece. A shared diagnosis, that means we're trying to get to the source of the dissatisfaction. Is it a CERC issue? Is it a SWAN issue? Is it maybe something at the member library that's not working properly? So our first step in this plan is really to figure out, what's going on? What's going on with our ILS, and what do we need to do to make it better? Step 2 kind of goes along with that, deliver on the solutions that can be readily implemented while focusing on the long-term solutions. That is to say, let's fix what can be fixed, and then remain focused on long-term solutions, both at the same time. Number 3, reconstitute as a mission-driven 501c3 with a clear representative governance practices. So right now, you probably know SWAN is an intergovernmental entity, and there are limitations on the organization as that kind of entity. And there is precedence for library consortiums to be 501c3s. Those that are not limited by things such as a restriction on electronic voting or a necessity to have quorum in meetings, that sort of thing. So, and also with this one, I think that's really important. A 501c3 as a grant seeker is far more likely to obtain success than an intergovernmental entity. So that ties down to number 6. So that is something that we definitely hope to be exploring. Number 4, increased presence of the patron perspective. Obviously, we definitely want to do that. Right now, patron feedback to SWAN is sort of, I would say we rely heavily on anecdotal feedback or second or third degree feedback. We don't really have a mechanism or a structure for patrons to speak directly to SWAN or more directly to SWAN, and that's something that we definitely want to explore. Number 5 is strengthen the collective identity. So SWAN is growing, and we definitely want to leverage that growth, and we've seen a lot of great examples recently, particularly during the migration of library-to-library support and facilitating things between the members. We definitely want to build in a structure to SWAN that encourages that and helps that to grow. And then finally, number 6, seek external funding options to support the research and development initiatives of SWAN. Again, as a 501c3, we could be pursuing grant funding in a new way, and obviously anything that we can pay for with a grant is something that we don't have to pay for from our reserves. So those are the objectives so far. The board is here. We're happy to talk about any of this if anyone has any questions. Again, this is a draft. Yes?
Can I make a request? When you announced on February 5th that you were going to have a committee of the whole meeting, instead of our usual morning, could you schedule it in the afternoon? The first 3 Mondays of February, ILA is having legislative meetups. Those are usually breakfast or lunch meetups.
Sure.
So if you could push it back to afternoon, that would be great.
That's awesome feedback. Thank you. We'll make Anything else? Yes, Sue?
How difficult is it to change from your current structure into a 501c3?
Probably pretty difficult. Aaron is actually going to put together a committee to explore that. The board will put together a group to explore. It's been done, and certainly it can be done. It's just a series of legal steps that we'll have to take. We're governed by our bylaws. There'll be a dissolution, and then we'll have to reconstitute as the 501c3. But certainly organizations have done it before, and there is precedent within the library.
So in Illinois, other organizations are 501?
Yeah, like the Resource Sharing Alliance, that's the consortium in East Peoria. They're a 501c3.
Okay.
As part of the environmental scan, I made sure to include other consortia. There were 2 in Massachusetts. They're 501c3. I wanted to make sure that as we were kind of looking around, is the 501c3 effective for library consortium? They confirmed that.
Yeah, I think it's exciting. It really lifts a lot of limitations. David?
So you're not concerned that it can't happen, you just know that it's going to be a lot of work.
It's a process.
It's a process. I had an initial conversation with an attorney who gave me just sort of a basic idea of what it might be like, maybe a ballpark in terms of the costs, to do something like that, because there was a conversion. Yes, how you doing?
Hi, there was some legislative changes a couple of years ago on the federal side making it easier to become a 501c3, so the paperwork has been reduced, so it's still a lot of work, but not like what it used to be. So it should be easier.
Yeah, that is true, yes. Yes.
As you develop the 501c3 process, I would be very interested in still understanding how the structure would work in terms of, with being an intergovernmental where your meetings are open and the way that members can give feedback is very fluid, and I enjoy that. And so transferring into a 501c3, how does that affect the relationship between the members and the board?
I think it's a great question. Instead of being governed by OMA, that process would be governed by our bylaws. So it would be, in the reconstitution effort, we would have to be very clear in our bylaws to maintain the level of transparency that we have right now. But it wouldn't be an OMA issue, it would be a bylaws issue. But hopefully it would be very, very similar to what we have now.
Great, that's good.
Thanks.
And I'm sure many of you have foundations associated with your libraries, and you know that their bylaws can be very different, but you can make it, and we can make sure that the patron or member library attendance at board meetings can occur, and to make sure that we build in member library comment as part of our regular operating procedures.
That's right, Julia. And I think one of the huge benefits to this would be that whole issue of electronic voting and being physically present at the site to vote that OMA binds us to. It really lifts a lot of limitations for member participation because you'll be able to do it in whatever way we think is best for the organization.
Yeah, all those folks who are currently online listening to this meeting under 501c3, they would be able to vote on something we were doing at this meeting. And that's the kind of thing that we really want to allow, that flexibility. It's something that's come up time and time again to allow us electronic attendance and electronic voting. And being a government entity in Illinois doesn't allow that, but 501c3 status does, which is why we thought it was so important and made it one of our objectives here.
So we're going to have really good snacks at Quarterly. Everyone's just going to vote from their office. Anything else? Awesome. All right, well, thank you. And as I say, there'll be a full presentation on the 4th. If anything comes up as you're reading this document in the meantime, please feel free to email any member of the board or Aaron, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. So, yes, thank you.
Hi, everybody. In case you don't know me, I'm Aaron Skog. I'm the SWAN Executive Director. How many folks do we have online today?
About 16.
16 online, okay. Hi, folks online. Hi, everybody in Burbridge. So I have in your packet an overview of what we're looking at as far as our mobile presence. So I have used a couple of the quarterly meetings this year. In March, I also provided an update on what's going on in Cersei Dynix land with their development of a new mobile application. And then at the September meeting, I did an overview of SWAN's current mobile app and the status of what our mobile app presence has been, which is through BookMine. So what we're looking today is I've talked to the board about looking at Blue Cloud Mobile and got pricing on that. We've talked about the pricing, and there was discussion as far as the pricing in terms of how it would be part of maybe our FY20 budget, which we're starting to do work on. When do we bring maybe a mobile app forward for the membership in terms of looking at our 19 budget. So what this does mean, if we are looking at moving forward with a mobile app, the recommendation is we should move forward with Blue Cloud Mobile. So this was a mobile app that was released earlier this year. Just so you know, the versioning for this goes by like this 2018.09. So the newest version came out just a few months ago. This is in a pretty good development cycle, unlike BookMine. BookMine has largely been the static product that when we went live in 2015, and it was just largely like kind of not really well thought of, I would say, by SWAN member libraries. So it was clear that once something else was available, that we should really take a good hard look at it. And so I've had Cersei Dynix out. We've had discussions with SWAN staff. I did share in the packet information about it. There's a recorded webinar. I also included that in your September meeting packet. So if you haven't taken a look at that recording, you'll really get a good sense of what the capability is. Cersei Dynix also has other presentations that they're doing. So, and I've also encouraged SWAN libraries to download the app from a couple other consortia, such as CleveNet or the Chemeketa Cooperative Regional Library Service that's out in Oregon. And we're now ready to look at bringing forward this mobile app. What it will mean is that we would have to, once again, modify our FY17 budget, but it would just be to modify budget lines, not increase membership fees necessarily. We're just looking at making sure our budget aligns with the cost of this app, and the board wanted to use SWAN reserves for the 2 years of this app before we start looking at our FY21 budget, including that in full operating costs. So in terms of the Blue Cloud mobile capabilities, this would include individual branding for each library through something called templates. So we could include different look, different feel for your library, color scheme, even your library logo. We also have the ability to integrate e-resources. They've just now added into the mobile, the Access 360, the one-click download of content. So let's say you were in eRead Illinois, which is the Access 360 ebook provider. This now has the ability to, if you click on the ebook and it's available, you can just be reading it directly in the app. You don't need additional apps or installations on the phone to do that. And they are starting to work on the same integration with Overdrive. So ebook reading would just be directly within the application. The My Account has features, of course, that you would want for holds, checkouts, suspending holds. Some of the things that you would typically see with a library mobile app would be like an ISBN barcode scanning. What we liked about this app also is it had the ability for, let's say, if you had the mobile app and you had multiple family cards, members of your family that had cards, you could add those into the app. So it could facilitate a nice transaction maybe at the circulation desk where we certainly have libraries that want to be able to check out something to a person that may not be there, but if they have the mobile app, it would be something that we would encourage libraries to work with if the mobile app has, like, let's say, you know, the kid's barcode or the husband who couldn't make it in to the library that day, but they've got holds available to be able to check out to that. We're looking at future development. Like I said, based on that revision number, they're really looking at continuous development. So what Cersei Dynex has done is they've worked with a mobile app company called Solus. They're based in the UK. They have really high praise for working with Solus, meaning that they're very quick to incorporate changes, requested changes, and they come out in these dot releases. So even when I've downloaded the app early in 2018, it's continually getting new updates as new versions are being released and new features. So we're looking at to be able to provide this mobile app for all the libraries in SWAN. This will be a 2-year subscription, looking at 2 years paid from reserves. We're targeting that we'd have this, all the templates, all the setup ready for all of our libraries, looking at our April month for go live. So this would be a single app with customized templates for each library. We would include, of course, like training events to get library staff familiar with it. And we'd also like to create promotional material for libraries to use. You could give to patrons. I've shared at a couple quarterly meetings this year of what we did for like the patron notification brochure. As an example of things that we could do is, you know, PR material that could go out for libraries if you want to provide those to patrons. It could be in the form of bookmarks, other types of things promoting this. So I'll stop. I went real fast. In your packet also there's the overview of this going from pages 16 to 18. If you have any questions about this, I'm happy to answer them right now. Kathy.
I'm just curious, is there a deadline or reason why we're rushing to do this now instead of waiting till the new budget and put it in a new budget rather than trying to revise an existing budget?
If we really wanted to bring this forward and get started on it now and get the mobile app to our libraries, we felt that as soon as that work was done, that bill would be due. So this would be occurring in the 19 fiscal year. So the board talked about whether or not we should wait until FY20. They recommended that we bring this forward now, just amend the FY19 budget so we can get started on the work sooner rather than waiting until July.
But again, I mean, it's getting to be a habit, this bit of revising the budget and taking money out of the reserve. If we're going to vote for a budget every year, why don't we stay within the budget? We as individual members have to stay within our budget. That's why I'm asking, is there a time frame that you have to hit a certain date to sign on to this, that we're jumping on it right now?
It's purely just to make sure that we were definitely hearing that there was a desire to have mobile capabilities from SWAN. This is available. We wanted to show that the organization could move quickly and bring something forward, so it does mean revising the budget. Question from Yvonne or comment?
No, I just think this is, a great timing with summer reading coming up and all of the patrons that we're going to be having coming in and all of the high contact, particularly with the, this is when I know the youth services theme has to do with movies and what is it, action at your?
It's showtime.
It's showtime at your library, thank you. So, I think this is a great way to show, it's showtime at your library. We've got all these new things that can come through one single app. So in terms of when you're going to get a lot of people in, that attracts that parent and child, I think that would be a great rollout time so we can get used to it in April. And then, when summer reading hits, we're all ready.
Other comment?
Forgive me if this is in the packet, but I saw on the slide that it integrates with events at your library. So how does the app work with different events?
It would be like the Evance feed. If you're using like Evance, then it could have a link to that, but it's not necessarily going to show like events in like the mobile search part.
What about Communico?
Communico events?
Yeah.
We'd have to see whether or not that has the ability to like take a feed from Communico, but without over-promising, I think it would probably be able to take a feed from.
And the Overdrive integration, I saw that was slated. Is there a timeline on that at all?
Dawn, I don't think I've heard when they're looking at it. I think it's somewhat early.
We're testing it now, so
Yeah,
it's soon.
we're testing it now. Yeah, I know, the Overdrive would be fantastic. Julie has a comment.
Well, and just one of the reasons that we chose as a board to move this forward was in hearing during the strategic planning process, and particularly the survey, that libraries were really interested in either an app that worked or responsive design. And those were things that we wanted right away. Well, Cersei Dynex isn't going to get to responsive design anytime soon. However, they have a mobile app now that actually works, unlike the whole book mine thing. So the board decided to bring this forward in response to what we were hearing in that strategic planning process, and as an initiative that we could put forward right now to meet our patron and member library needs more quickly without having to wait for a new fiscal year. Because we do have a reserve that is well above what our policy states our reserves should be. And so to meet member demand immediately and roll it out before summer reading, we felt was going to be of value to the members.
Comment from the back.
A couple of things. One is I'm from a small library. Something like this is awesome. I could look cool to have this mobile app. That's not going to affect anything. Plus, we need to stay relevant. Everybody has a mobile app. We need to be relevant in our community and people with tax dollars now that they're getting what they want. And our own patrons and users are using the mobile devices. So this is awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Cindy. I mean, we've definitely been hearing a chorus from the membership of why don't we have a mobile app? And now that one is available, we definitely wanted to put that forward. So it may seem rushed, but we have excess reserves that can cover this, and it seemed like a paramount request from the membership, which is why we put it forward now. Yes?
It's also National Library Week in April.
Okay. tied to that.
That would be a great rollout week, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so when you look at time, just a little marker on the calendar for a big rollout for that.
Oh, Jean.
Can you, the self-service for checkout check-in I see is under development. Can you kind of talk about how that would work on the mobile app? Because like, can somebody check in an item from home and say, oh, I checked it in?
I think what that's about, that's the near field communication, right? That's part of it.
Yeah.
So most mobile devices have something called a near field communication, NFC. So in the past, I think we were working with a library like Hinsdale to be able to have a patron, if so desired, scan the item directly from the mobile app and check out the item. And who knows, this may lend itself to maybe more of a tablet-based self-check system down the road. I just throwing out, maybe that'd be cool if they could do that. Edith.
I just want to also point out that I appreciate the fact that the board is considering taking funds from the reserve for the next 2 years as opposed to directly passing that on to other libraries. For those libraries that do have an app currently, like we do, it gives us a chance to be able to look at both apps and see which better suits for our patrons. So I appreciate that.
Other questions? Amy.
So she just mentioned like they already have an app. So 2 years down the road, she wants to keep her app but not go with this one. Would she still be charged like within her membership fees for this app? Because I see the breakdown. And it's at like the 97 libraries, the 98. So would she still be paying a portion for this, even if she chose to keep her own app?
I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves,
Yeah.
but I would say, some of what we do in SWAN is, we'll include a number of options within membership fees. So, yes, technically, if we include it for everybody, but you decided not to use it, it would be an option within your library if you wanted to use it down the road, or we could have discussions about, libraries that don't want it and figure something out. But right now, we really want to bring this forward so that there's a template for everybody. Everybody has an opportunity to sort of kick the tires on it, decide whether or not you're ready to promote it to patrons, and then evaluate your own mobile app experience and decide whether or not you want to re-up on your own. There's probably going to be instances where maybe you're wanting your library mobile app and the Blue Cloud mobile app, just from the standpoint that sometimes your own individual library app is going to have different purposes, rather than just searching the catalog. Yes?
I got a comment. We did kind of have a discussion around that, and our change of perspective of always thinking of the patron first is it's really not the library making a decision to have a mobile app, it's a patron making that decision. And one thing we will be able to get is statistics from the use of this mobile app from Cersei Dynamics. So that will help us in that evaluation as well.
On that note though, the libraries that do use another app, we should be able then to consider that data collected from those libraries and not just depend on the accuracy.
Yeah, I'll just point out, BookMine is out there. You might have patrons right now using BookMine and also your library app. It's certainly likely that many of your libraries are working under that scenario now. I just don't think BookMine was heavily promoted by SWAN libraries. They weren't really thrilled with it. And we're hoping this is the mobile app that you'd be waiting for. All right, per our bylaws, we're going to have to modify our budget. Oh, one more comment in the back.
I have a question. So like when your patron is searching for this app, would they be looking for a SWAN Blue Cloud app or would they look for your library's name?
This would be under like a single name, so we haven't quite settled on that yet. It wouldn't be like your individual library name. The two consortia I gave as examples, they've taken that approach, the Cleveland and Chemeketa. But once the patron has downloaded it and logged in, the entire look and feel brands to their home library. So then it starts to just automatically feel like it's your library and your app, but it's the finding in the store initially that may be the part that we're hoping that in the PR material and the promotion that you'll be able to get that, out to them.
And the availability, when that app is availability, it's something across the board we can roll out in enterprise, in the home screen so that everybody sees there's an app available for SWAN at every price profile.
Kelly?
So then Aaron, by March's SWAN quarterly, this will be ready for the trainings to get ready for summer.
I'm hoping by March that we're pretty far along with it. And like I said, we're targeting April for this. So maybe by March we'll have had library staff being able to play around with it, have some updates on it. But we got to pass the budget. So are we okay moving forward with this? Tiffany would do a roll call. She's our board secretary. She's got the list.
Okay, get ready for a lot of awkward pauses. Oh, yes, we do. We need a motion.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead with that?
I make a motion to amend the SWAN budget to include the monies for Blue Cloud Mobile.
Second.
Oh, I have to read it exactly? Oh. The FY19 budget line 5400 equipment rental repair and maintenance agreements be revised from $468,200 to $491,683. Did I say that right? For the subscription of Blue Cloud Mobile, and the FY19 budget line 5430 consulting be revised from $44,500 to $65,100 for the one-time setup cost for Blue Cloud Mobile. Yes, you always have to be clear about the money.
And I second.
Acorn.
Yes.
Alsip. Batavia. Bedford Park.
Yes.
Beecher. Bellwood. Bensonville. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Bellwood.
Oh, yes, thank you. Good. I was trying to see one. Bensonville Library. Bensonville School District. Berkeley. Berwyn. Yes. Bloomingdale. Blue Island. Bridgeview. Broadview. Brookfield. Calumet City. Calumet Park. Carroll Stream. Chicago Heights.
Yes.
Chicago Ridge.
Yes.
Cicero. Clarendon Hills. Crestwood.
Yes.
Crete.
Yes.
Dalton. Downers Grove. Yes. Okay. Eisenhower. Elmwood Park, yes. Evergreen Park. Flossmoor.
Yes.
Forest Park. Frankfurt. Franklin Park. Geneva. Glen Ellen. Glenwood Linwood. Grand Prairie. Harvey. Hillside?
Yes.
Oh. You did, I swear. I'm losing. Hinsdale. Hodgkins. Homewood? They don't have any. Indian Prairie? Itasca.
Yes.
Justice. Caneville? LaGrange.
Yes.
LaGrange Park.
Yes.
Lansing. Lyons. Markham. Matson.
No.
Maywood. McCook, Melrose Park,
Yes.
Messenger,
Yes.
Midlothian, Morton Arboretum, McConaughey, National University of Health Sciences.
Yes.
Oh, welcome. North Riverside, North Lake, Oak Brook, Oak Lawn, Oak Park,
Yes.
Palos Heights, Palos Park, Park Forest. A lot of you are at the end of the alphabet. Prairie State, Prairie Trails, Bridgeton Park, River Forest,
Yes.
River Grove, Riverdale, Riverside, St. Charles, Schiller Park, South Holland,
Yes.
Stager, South Chicago Heights, Stickney, Forest View, Sugar Grove, Summit, Theosophical Society, Thomas Ford,
Yes.
Thornton, Tinley,
Yes.
Town and Country, University Park, Villa Park, West Chicago,
Yes.
Westchester,
Yes.
Westmont,
Yes.
William Leonard, Wooddale,
Yes.
Woodridge, Worth. There you go. I'm sure the ayes have it. There were 2 opposed. I'll count it up. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Ready to talk about some resource sharing in SWAN, and there's been discussion, I want to say with board members, library directors in SWAN about Find More Illinois and how this ties back to SWAN. So in your packet, I included an overview and some recommendations. It's a document that begins on exhibit page 19, ends on 26 with some of the recommendations. Forgive me if it's a little long. You know me by now. But I thought it would be important if we're going to try to answer some questions about SWAN and Find More Illinois. It was important to discuss some of the other resource sharing initiatives that SWAN's involved in. Some of these you're probably aware of. Some of them you may not be. They may be things that, let's say, your interlibrary loan staff are more familiar with, or you may be aware of like things like internet access. How does that apply to your library? So in the packet, I wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to read this over in advance. In terms of resource sharing, I mean, it's just important to start with SWAN is a resource sharing model. It's a shared ILS system. It's a shared bibliographic database, a shared patron database, which is a really important component of the resource sharing that we have. If you are not aware, I have showed in the past statistics that show that reciprocal borrower activity is actually a higher part of our resource sharing than even our interlibrary loan. So that reciprocal borrowing activity means, we have patrons that are going to libraries, down the road, easily being able to go to the desk, check out materials. You can look them up very quickly. One of the benefits for Green Hills in joining SWAN is the fact that Green Hills patrons are heavy users of nearby SWAN libraries. So it was important, I felt, in the document to just, also state that. And there's statistics that I will show you as well that show what our resource sharing looks like. SWAN is also a participant in OCLC. So as part of that, we've made sure that the cost of that OCLC participation is part of your membership. So even though there are probably individual cost breakdowns per library as far as what it costs that I get from the group services contract from the state, SWAN gets one invoice, one total invoice where we pay for our costs for OCLC. That allows us to have libraries that are the cataloging library designee to be able to use OCLC to bring records into our consortium. But also important with that is the interlibrary loan component that comes with that, the World Share ILL. So OCLC is serving two functions. It's supplying bibliographic records, sometimes referred to as a bibliographic utility, and the resource sharing platform. You cannot minimize the fact that every university, big college in the state of Illinois is more than likely always going to be an OCLC user. You're going to find materials in there. Just as an update, we've done work over this last year to do reclamation. So this would be taking all of your library's holdings, and we did basically like a wipeout and a reset of all those in OCLC. So the OCLC records are reflecting, what your current holdings are for your collections, and we're moving forward with revamping how we keep those updated. So we typically done that on like a monthly frequency basis. We've also done work, and I shared this at the last quarterly meeting and over at our summer extravaganza, that we've added some capabilities with some of our libraries. They're now live with it to be able to have patrons actually search the OCLC WorldCat Discovery. And if they find materials that are not available in SWAN, it allows them to make a direct request. So there's a button that appears next to those items. So we've done for a few of our libraries. St. Charles is the one that I would say is most notable. They were probably the first one that we worked with. So there's a link that we provided on the enterprise profile for them at the top that says request items outside of SWAN, and it brings them the OCLC interface. They can search, find items. If the item is not in SWAN, the button appears and they can make a request. So this is something that we've worked on recently to be able to allow patrons, your patrons, if they need to find materials, they can do that and make requests, and those go into the ILL component of OCLC. Internet access is a level of membership. Its origins are like back when we used to have modem dial-ups, or we were dialing into, remember the old DOS-based system? So what we had with this is we certainly have a number of libraries that take advantage of this level of access. Essentially, we're giving them like a patron barcode and PIN. They go to the enterprise catalog. We give them instructions on how to place holds in there. Items requested are sent by delivery. More often than not, these are going to their school library. Its partner would be maybe their local public library, and those school staff would go to the public library and pick up those items when they're available. We do have a few public libraries that are not SWAN that take advantage of the internet access. Lyle would be a good example where they can request materials directly from SWAN. The cost of this has been something that we've maintained relatively inexpensive, but I have had discussions with the board about maybe revising this, breaking it into maybe a tier system. It's roughly around, I want to say, $610 a year. But the low cost point of that was designed really for school librarians to be able to use it. Share Illinois, if you've not heard about it or you're hearing about it for the first time, it's similar to internet access in that the consortia in this region have set up individual barcodes per library. So let's say the C24 libraries in CCS, they've set up barcodes for your libraries in their system. We have barcodes set up for them. Same thing, interlibrary loan staff would log into the catalog, search, place requests for materials in there. So essentially, when your library staff are processing holds, it'd be like they're processing holds just for any patron in SWAN. Those staff that work in circulation are probably familiar with sometimes there's requests, they require different processing. Look in the back of the room. And then what we have now is something new called Find More Illinois. This is a new resource sharing platform. Rails has rolled this out. They piloted it. It's been talked about for a number of years now. It was described sort of in the early days as an overlay. So think of it as the ability to bring into a union catalog all the holdings from standalone libraries, consortium libraries in one unified display, with the purpose of maybe making it similar to an OCLC type system where patrons would then be able to log in and place requests in that. So because it's new, it's changing and evolving. It's through Autographics. So it's a contract with a company that Autographics does this with a platform called ShareIt. ShareIt has been around for a while. They've had plenty of statewide implementations like this. Colorado is a good example of that. So in terms of where they're at with it, they're looking for member libraries that they want to sign up for that and participate. They can. One of the things I wanted to note in terms of what our ILL looks like, and I include this page 21, and it's here on the screen for you. The amount of interlibrary loan that we're talking about within SWAN, let's say this is, SWAN libraries share with each other's, the ILL traffic in comparison to the all the checkouts that are occurring. This is a date range that we're looking at. It's including the fact that our 19 libraries started May 1. So we wanted to take a snapshot of where we're at. You can see that about 13.52% is the ILL sharing amongst you all. Of that, the internet access, any other ILL borrowing and lending is extremely small percentage. Looking at it another way with numbers, over these past 5 months, we're really talking about, for internet access about, 3,800, ILL about 10,000. So it's really a small amount of the interlibrary loan that we have. And I will say, when I studied this a number of years ago as well, and looking at as far as the amount of ILL activity we had in OCLC compared to the consortium, around that time it was around 4 or 5%. The fact that we're seeing this now down to 1% is really, I think, strong evidence of showing like the size of the consortium now is allowing the libraries to fulfill the majority of the requests for material that are needed through the consortium itself. So when you're getting to this, it's a little bit like, well, if we want to move outside of the OCLC model that we participate in now, that's included in your membership fees, how high are you really looking to expand that access? Is it that you want to double that number? Perhaps, maybe the access that we're providing to OCLC over the next year through the patrons be able to directly request will increase these. But I guess in the end, the way I view it is, what's the type of problem we're trying to solve? So those are some stats. I've got the document here. I included recommendations, just noting as far as for example, like consortia that participate in Find More Illinois, the entire consortia appears in the Find More Illinois database, but it's only that participating library that can respond to requests. Does that make sense, Yvonne?
Yeah, I just have a question in terms of, so how many SWAN libraries have the OCLC integration on their enterprise app? So you said St. Charles. Anybody else?
We do.
How many?
I believe we have about 10
Okay.
configured in the enterprise as a drop-down. Every one of the SWAN libraries is configured that we just have to add it to the enterprise drop-down library links when the libraries are wanting that. We had one workshop in September.
Yep.
We'll have another early in the year, and we are forming an ILL user group, which will meet in January. I'm not sure the exact date, to make sure that everybody understands that capability and how to use it.
So if we want it, we just let you know.
Send in a support ticket. Yep.
Yeah, that's the easiest way to do it. Or watch when we announce the workshop, and you can have staff go and find out a little bit more what that means, because we've done all this setup. It's really just more of a matter at this point, you all feel comfortable that you're ready to make that available in your enterprise.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful to send out if people are interested, because then you could establish a test, from a statistical data point gathering. I know we would tell you to do it today. So I think that would be very helpful in terms of the impact for Interlibrary Loan, because I think patrons, if they don't find it, they just go, oh well, and then maybe I'll go visit another library.
Yeah.
Don't understand the whole system of how it works.
We saw the need also
Yeah.
based on some of our two consortia that joined us, that they had like standing groups for ILL, and we thought that was something that we didn't have that was active in SWAN, so we decided as part of our 2019 meeting events that we were going to establish that group and start setting meetings for them to come together more frequently to talk about this, because there's just been a lot of changes that the 19 libraries have probably felt, and probably the 78 libraries in SWAN, in terms of the amount of ILL maybe that they're processing, and we really want to make sure that if we're going to move forward with some of these other recommendations that I included here, that we also had a group to provide some feedback to us with. If we want to move away from providing internet access or get away from the Share Illinois models and just tell other public libraries that aren't in SWAN that if you really are looking for material, you would get it through OCLC or the Rails, Find More Illinois as the way to get those materials. Other questions? Are people looking to join the Find More? You've probably gone to maybe some of the meetings. I don't have an update as far as what that integration that we're working on, when that's complete, other than we've had a few initial meetings with Autographics and SWAN staff and the Open Athens folks to get that going. David?
And the lack of data security, what are they saying about that?
It's understood that for SWAN that we would that the model that it's currently been set up in wouldn't be one that we would even prefer to go with. Okay, I appreciate you supporting me on that. That we really wanted to make it a contemporary setup where we're using our Open Athens with that HTTPS stuff, using protocols that are standard, get away from kind of the SIP2 stuff, which is old, it's not inherently secure. So we are excited about what that can do for us, because we've been using that quite a bit. That's how we built the OCLC authentication for patrons. That's going on through our Open Athens platform. Dawn wants to answer.
This will be a topic of kind of analysis and a discussion with the ILL users group. If any of you are interested to start doing some analysis now, one thing I would recommend that your ILL staff do is look at their request queue. What you're sending out for requests for borrowing material outside of SWAN that's in your Wilshire ILL request queue, and take that list and search against Find More Illinois. Are those titles available in Find More Illinois? And do kind of a comparison. If they are available in Find More Illinois, then it would be feasible to request them there. But if you're finding that they're not available in Find More Illinois, you're still going to have to use OCLC to get that material for your patrons.
Julie?
I'm going to take off my board member hat, put on my Downers Grove Library hat for a moment, and just say that at least for us locally, the internet access is very important because our local high school district uses it extensively, and they work with our library. We have a very close partnership with them. They regularly get a significant amount of delivery through our library. We have a whole system with them. It works great. So as far as the internet access, at least as far as schools go, I would advocate to keep that for our schools, particularly for those who have a public library SWAN member that they're partnering with to make this a really viable and cost-effective means for them to get the materials that they need. On the other hand, we don't use Share Illinois a whole lot. My ILL folks tell me it's a backup. They really would not see a big difference if we stopped participating. And Find More Illinois, because it comes at a cost, and we're already paying for OCLC, so far does not appear to be of value, at least according to my ILL staff, having done the kinds of look at what we're getting and where. So do your own study, figure out what your library is actually using OCLC, what you might use for Find More, and make up your mind on whether or not we have time, because we can't do anything with SWAN and Find More until the Open Athens thing is fixed. So you have time to study the problem.
And this is the last slide. I think it's just another, illustrating that as we've grown, that's really helped reduce the amount of external ILL. So these were numbers that raised my eyebrows that it's gone down quite a bit after adding the 19 libraries. So Tara, you want to come up and help me out, or I'll step aside. Tara Wood's going to talk about the new support site. Let me see that clicker that will
This will be short and sweet because you sort of all had almost 2 weeks now to play around and explore the new SWAN on your own. But I'm just going to give a few updates about the site. SWAN staff put this together in took about 3 to 4 months, which if any of you have ever done a library website redesign, you can appreciate how fast this came together and how hard our content team worked. So I think you should all really, I just want to give a big round of applause to our content team. Scott, Stephen, Crystal, Lauren, Helen, and Dawn, of course, and Joseph. Am I forgetting anyone? I think that's all of us. So really worked hard in getting all this content into the site. Like, I was even gone for 2 weeks, and I came back, and it was just like all of a sudden, all of the cat pictures we put in this test were gone. There was like real stuff there. So I do just want to iterate that it will be live on December 11th, and what that means is you'll go to support.swanlibraries.net, just like always, and you'll see the new site. But for now, you can see it at swandev.swanlibraries.net. You don't have to remember that. Obviously, it's on the slide here, but also linked from the current support site. And it features improved searching. I think if you do some test searches, you'll see that it's much better. And thanks to Brian Smith here at Rails, he worked with us on getting the structure of the site and the development going. So, much better searching. All the documentation now has been rewritten into a more web-friendly format, which is partly why that searching is so much better. And that's what SWAN staff are really hard at work doing. You can print, if you like your printed documents and manuals, don't worry. I will show you in just a minute. You'll be all set. We do have this quick library lookup feature on the homepage. Give that a spin. It's a very handy feature that's been pretty popular with the advisory groups that we've shown it to. You can plug in the 3-letter code of a library, a barcode also for an item if you're looking that up. Did you have a question, David?
No.
Okay, sorry. And so to give that a spin, and there's also a new known issues tracking feature. It's not super populated yet, but as you submit tickets to us and we can find these issues that we know about, we're working on with Cersei, Dynex, EBSCO, other vendors. We're going to keep track of those, and you'll be able to see, what are some known issues that are happening around SWAN. That will be under that help section of the site. So quickly, I wanted to show that you can print and download kind of whole manuals of documentation. I think this little video will just kind of quickly show under documentation. You can go to the circulation section or any section, hit download PDF or print, and it will download or print everything in that whole section. So all of the documentation that you see in the whole section of that site, not just a page. So you're not having to go through any of the documentation sections and print like 87 pages. You can just kind of download or print it all in one click. In our interviews before we got started on the site, we found that many people do like to keep a binder at their desk, save something on their desktop of documentation and have it handy, in cases of outages or anything like that. So that will be available for all of you. So give that a spin, and if you have any questions, of course, you can submit a ticket to help@swanlibraries.net, or if you have feedback on the site, there's also a link on the site itself to submit a form with your feedback. And then should I just skip ahead to the,
yes. I want to say thank you. It's awesome, finally. And I feel like you guys took everything that the users group said and really tried their most, which is very hard, as we know, trying to please everybody. I've been messing with that every way I can, and I get every result I'm looking for. I'm for the first time in my life.
I'm so glad. Yeah, I've been really surprised how positive the feedback is. Like, you guys have done that many complaints.
She kept us for hours with a long list of things.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Oh, I'm so glad you like it. Yes, and Cindy was one of our interviewees, so we really appreciate. Also, I should thank everyone that participated in interviews, the card sort as well, and the tree test that we had online. Your feedback all went into this, and if you probably are seeing some of the recommendations you made, so we really appreciate it. So on the patron side of things, the Discovery and User Experience Group, DUX, conducted a usability test in the fall, and this is just a quick recap. There's a full test report in the packet, but the 3 libraries participated: St. Charles, Tinley Park, and Oakland. We recruited patrons through an online survey. We were looking for a mix of kind of experience with the library. I don't want to share the patrons' identities or anything, but I will say we had a range from patrons that were very, very savvy search users to one patron who responded to my email to set up a time with him, all in the subject line of the email. So it kind of gives you an idea of the range of kind of comfort with technology. We were specifically looking at formats and facets and kind of how patrons use those, and we came up with a couple of recommendations. One thing that really stood out was the e-reader facets. Very confusing because all of our other formats, for ebooks, e-audiobooks, other stuff are things you download, and then there's this one weird one that's actually a physical item you take out of a library. Several people got tripped up by that, thinking that it was an ebook. Also, having physical and digital formats separate was very confusing for our patrons. There's also we tested out sort of a new version of those digital format facets, and even having clearer facets, just ebook, e-audiobook, e-video, just having them separate from the print was super confusing for patrons. They really struggled with that. So, and then another kind of recommendation we came out of was partly related to the e-reader issue, is sort of what facets are what, I think, so sometimes users are just confused. Is this a book? Is it you don't really get a sense of how these are related. That audiobooks are a type of book, ebooks are a type of book, but they're all kind of in this one bucket. Sometimes they weren't, especially audiobook. CD was really, oh my gosh, that was very difficult to watch. As people sort of struggle to the audiobook, they see CD, they think maybe it's music, they're just kind of quickly skimming and don't quite see what all these different facets and how they relate to each other. So one of our enhancements that we're looking into is kind of grouping those facets into some kind of hierarchy. We're also looking at persistent facets, kind of a clear search function. So when patrons search, that they do another search, all their facets that they've worked so hard at applying get wiped out, which is very frustrating and doesn't really mirror what you see on other sites across the internet. Again, the include-exclude function is a weird enterprise peculiarity. You don't see it on Amazon. You just click the facet and go, and that's what our people expect. There is an availability function in Enterprise that we can turn on, but it doesn't really work optimally. And one thing is it's a button instead of a facet. And we turned it on just for the tests, and patrons never saw it. Even though it's a big old button at the top of the facets, they're just expecting a checkbox. So we want to work with Cersei Dynamic to see if we can make that change. And then we want to do some more research to see kind of better how to handle fields for vendor and device information. A lot of that's kind of confusing. We kind of noticed that most patrons never use the vendor information, but except in the case of, or the device information, except for a Kindle user, really dependent on that Kindle facet to get to their device. And then we want to look into kind of ideal facet behavior again. The include-exclude doesn't really work. Do we want something that's more where you just click a link and it applies the facet? Is a checkbox more appropriate? And then looking at a better label for article search. Nobody knew what that was. So we want to kind of dig into that and see how we can make our EDS integration a little more obvious and more available to patrons. Any questions about the recent usability test? Stephen does next.
All right. Good morning, everyone. So I want to talk about a project that we've had going on for a while now, and that's the SWAN server infrastructure migration. So it's a little bit more than a server upgrade, and so I kind of want to walk through some of the aspects of the project, and really we're at the last leg of it. So I want to say kind of what's next in that project. So you may recall we introduced this project back in January of this year, and in actuality, Ian, Rudy, and I have been probably working on this since March of the previous year, doing research and testing and everything like that. And so ultimately we settled on migrating our entire infrastructure from this building here, from the Rails data center, to Microsoft Azure, so moving everything to the cloud. And so this involved all sorts of testing. To this point, we've probably had up to maybe 10 or 15 instances of the SWAN test server in Microsoft Azure, just doing different things, batteries of tests, and trying to work through some issues that we encountered kind of halfway through. We've ironed out all those bugs, and now we're full steam ahead. So the light's at the end of the tunnel. This is the last leg of it. So let me recap just a couple things that we've done in the recent months. So we first of all, we had the Symphony 353 upgrade. And the reason that we did that is because there's actually a report optimization that came with that Symphony upgrade that allows us to really take advantage of the server performance. It also kind of circumvents some performance degradation that we found from specific patches that were coming with the new operating system upgrade. So we first did the Symphony 353 upgrade. All of you have that. All of you have the new workflows client. So that's been kind of trucking along. And then so the next thing that we did was the actual operating system upgrade. So the server that we're on that runs our Symphony server, we actually upgraded the operating system that's living on. And the kind of a complicated way that we had to do it, we actually abandoned the old server entirely and we moved everything to a brand new server, a new virtualized server. So hopefully that was just about seamless to you. I remember we had told you that we were probably going to have to use that Symphony Bridge and have up to 2 days of downtime. In actuality, we did it overnight, finished the whole thing in probably 4 hours. So we were really excited about that. And I want to say thank you to Ian, who had worked with Cersei Dynamics overnight to finish that upgrade, and everything went smoothly with that. So now the last phase of this is we have 353, we've upgraded the OS, so we're getting all the newest patches, security and everything like that. We're fully compatible with Microsoft Azure, so we're ready to just move the server to the cloud. So we actually have a date for that. That's January 13th, and I'll go into a little bit more of the details with that. But this is it. This is the final stage of that project. We've moved everything else that's kind of complementary to the server. So we've actually already moved the network. All of you that we maintain your Sonic walls, we kind of stealthily moved everything over. So everything actually already talks to the Azure network. For those of you who are self-maintainers, Rudy has been working with the IT departments to make sure that all of that is set up and that you're able to talk to the Azure network. So we're pretty much ready to go. Just a couple more things remaining. The first of all is a benchmark of the server infrastructure. So it's pretty simple. Mostly what we want to do is we just want to get a really good volume test. We want to make sure that there are no issues with the network or any functionality or anything like that. So we actually have one of the test instances that's going to be open and accessible to all of the libraries. And so essentially what's going to happen is on next week, December 13th, from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., we're going to open up the floodgates. So all of you are welcome to log into workflows into the test server. By the way, I'm going to make an announcement of this tomorrow, so you'll all see a SWAN comment. It'll be on the support site. But you'll log into the test server anytime between 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And you know, if you're exceptionally busy and you can't do it, that's okay. But we do want as many of you to participate as possible. Basically, log in, open up the forum site survey, and just kind of follow along. There will just be a battery of tests. It'll be simple things like look up a series of patrons from your library. And remember, this is going to be interacting with the test server data. So it's going to be stale data. You're going to see checkouts that they've checked in, bills and things like that. That's fine. It's the old test server data. You can't hurt it. None of it's actually real data. But so the idea is just kind of go through, look up patrons, check out items, check in items, and just kind of keep testing it. I think the biggest thing that we want to see from that is we want to see the performance, but we also want to make sure that your library is able to get connected. So we want to make sure that there are no network connectivity issues there. And mostly what we're looking for are internal network connectivity issues. So there could have been at some point a route that had been changed by an IT staff member or something like that. We want to find all those before actually going live. And then also we want to make sure that you're able to log into it. And again, test kind of the overall performance of the platform. So just fill out that survey anytime during that period. We'll also have the survey open a little bit later after the server is closed. So at 12 p.m. we'll actually close down the test server. Testing will be done. And then we'll just take in the surveys and we'll kind of review the information there. If you run into issues, just make sure that you mark that in the survey. If you can't get into it at all, submit a help ticket and we'll try to get to it as quickly as we can. But you know, if you're not able to get to this for whatever reason or run into significant issues, it's not a problem. We just hope to get as many people involved as we can. And after that, January 13th is the big day. You may notice that's a Sunday. So we're trying to get around any downtime for the libraries entirely. I don't suspect that this will be as fast as the last one because we're working with 2 different server environments, so there's a little bit more of a bottleneck for the networking that we have to do. But yeah, so we're going to start at 6 p.m. on that Sunday, and it's going to extend into the Monday of January 14th. I don't have a good idea of how long that will take, but I would say just keep watching SWAN comms on January 14th. Watch for our all clear. There's a good possibility that you'll have to start the morning in offline mode. So, you know, if your library opens at 8 or 9, you may have to use offline mode for a little bit while we kind of finish things up, or if we have reports that have to finish, because we're also going to be way behind on reports because we're kind of foregoing our overnight maintenance to get this done. So that's going to have to be pushed back a little bit. So just be prepared on that morning. We could have to use offline for a little bit to do that. A very important part of this is we are doing an acquisitions freeze, and that's starting the Friday prior, so January 11th at noon. All acquisitions activity has to stop at that point, and this is to prevent any issues with orders. We saw that duplicate order issue that kind of came up from the last upgrade. We're hoping to avoid anything like that this time around. There are no client updates or upgrades or anything that you'll have to do in the library, including changing the host name or anything like that. You've already done just about all the work. So the remaining work is maybe a couple things that we'll have to do with your IT departments to just troubleshoot. But for the most part, everything's already in place. And that's the great thing about the last part of this upgrade is that we've already kind of pointed out a lot of the issues just by doing that server upgrade. And then the only other thing that we mentioned with that is PC reservation libraries have been impacted with their client hasn't been able to use the host name if you have an older version. So we'll work with your IT departments if you do have that issue. Let's see, and then Blue Cloud Analytics will be one day off because we're probably going to have to pause the harvest that happens overnight for that one. And then once again with the offline mode potentially on the morning of January 14th. The biggest part of all of this is keep watching SWAN comms, watch the SWAN support site. At that point, it'll be the new SWAN support site. So just watch for the updates there, and we'll try to keep you up to speed as best as we can. Any questions? All right. I think we're going to hand it off to Joseph now.
Hello, everyone. Just going to provide some information about how the Green Hills migration is going. We went with a very shortened timeline. After the new 19, we felt we were pretty set. Everybody knew how a migration was supposed to go. And we felt the relatively low number of records and patrons, BIB records and patron records, would make it a fairly smooth process. So the go-live date is scheduled for January 29th, Tuesday as always. Good luck Tuesdays. So we submitted the Rails LSAP grant, which was unsuspended earlier this year, and that was approved for the full cost of the migration, plus a small amount to cover print marketing. And we have some bookmarks that are just about ready to go to the printers, and we'll be supplying those to Green Hills patrons. They also have a newsletter that's going out very soon to all of the Palos Hills population.
And Hickory Hills.
What's that?
And Hickory Hills.
Yes.
That's where I grew up.
So the policies you may already be seeing in Symphony. We loaded those on Halloween or thereabouts. So you will see GHS in Symphony if you do any searches. The test data load completed just last week, and we got a chance to look at some data yesterday in the test server. The BIB records came over extremely clean thanks to Scott's magic. I don't know what else to call it. It's just magic.
I'll talk about it.
So we're going to start digging into the test data more fully starting next week, and we'll have some testing plans for Green Hills staff. I guess I should take a step back and say we have a dedicated team of 4 SWAN staff working on it, as well as 4 Green Hills management staff. The migration team is myself, Scott, Sam at SWAN, and Ian Nosik, sorry. The primary training dates for them are going to be tomorrow. Some SWAN staff will be out there all day. And then we have another training on January 11th. And here's a quick timeline of what's left. There's a few minor things missing from here, but these are the big pieces that sort of need to get done before that January 29th go live. So the VPN connections, actually, Ian and Rudy are working on those today, and we should have those set up for Green Hills staff to be able to log into the SWAN test server starting today. All staff training tomorrow, as I mentioned, and then we've got some on-site testing next week, which is going to be where we really dig in and see what sort of issues came up during that data load. The enterprise initial setup is going to happen next week as well. So Tara is going to be putting together their enterprise profile, and then we'll do customizations for that next month. We've got some Blue Cloud Analytics training for their management team on January 8th. And some more all-staff training on January 11th. And the enterprise customizations and data testing resolutions will happen shortly before go live. And then we prep for go live. And that final data extract and load and the go live on January 29th. I do want to mention that we are not planning to do a deduplication. Scott will get into that a little bit more. But we also do not expect any full downtime. We're planning on loading all of their data over our overnight maintenance reports, and we will share more information about that as we get closer, but we do not expect any SWAN downtime. Didn't really have too much more to share on that. Does anybody have any questions on the Green Hills migration?
All right, thanks, Joseph. We're getting near the end of our meeting. Wanted to just hit on the fact that in the packet, got the executive director report, and then I've also included an operations report. The operations report is a condensed version, if you can believe it, of a number of reports to the board. But that said, I just wanted to make sure that you were all had an opportunity to see, outside of the board packets, all the activities that have been going on in SWAN. One of the things that we'd like to do is have Scott Brandwine, he's our bid services manager, come up and talk a little bit about the catalog deduplication, because that's been an ongoing project since our 19 libraries joined us. So I think it would be helpful to talk about that. Maybe after he's done with that, I can open it up for you all if you've got questions about anything that was shared in there. If you're wondering about the drive-up window, that and some of the other things. And the next slide we'll talk about a little bit about what we're looking at over the next 3 months. So, Scott, you mind joining me up front?
Sure. Okay. So,
yeah, I gotta stay right.
I don't have slides, so
no, that's fine.
Yeah, there's a few things I'm actually going to address. The deduplication process is probably one of my. I thought maybe by the end of the year we could get it done. It was probably the most naive thing I've ever predicted since I started at SWAN. I didn't foresee how much busy work was involved in cleaning up these near miss matched pairs. They're the matched pairs that the Search Dynamics process identified as possible duplicates, but it couldn't be terribly sure, so it couldn't merge them together, but it gave them to us as a report of about 70,000, and therefore 140,000 records that we had to deal with. Combed through a lot of them before I gave them to my team. And then I thought the remaining 44,444 pairs, I remember that number, would kind of be cleaned up at the end of December. But the team is facing, records that just, they can't be merged together because we have two representations of the same thing. For example, a multi-volume book set here versus 7 different, single volume records here. Now we have to call libraries and figure out how we get this together because we don't really know we can't just make those relationships. We can't make those guesses. So it's a lot of communication. It's a lot of problem solving. It's still going, and it's going remarkably fast considering all this now. So we're down to a little less than 30,000, but I'm processing large sweeps every now and then. I can run it against our database. No, all these items disappeared, so we can cut it down that way. I'm throwing the holds database against it to prioritize things that have holds on them and seem to be moving a little more. And so it's getting cut down, and we are trying to prioritize the most popular items first. It's looking like spring, maybe March, will be through the end of it instead of right now. But it's moving pretty quickly. And so along these lines, this deduplication process being costly and incredibly time-consuming on my team, when it came to this Green Hills project, especially with a database of their size, which is small, why face this a second time, right? So what we ended up doing, and what I think worked, is I wrote a little script that sort of took an extract of their marked database, and it grabbed all of the standard numbers. It grabbed all the OCLC numbers, all their ISBNs, ISSNs, UPCs, any of those, and then I ran the same script against an extract from our own database, which was considerably longer, and smushed the two together essentially to match based on just these very simple standard numbers to see if we could just do the deduplication before we even had their data in our system. And so we ended up being able to send to Cersei Dynex a list of, their catalog records and the exact catalog record that their items should move on to. So we're not even taking in most of their bibliographic database. So they have 60,000 records, and we were able to match about 56,000 of them. About 80% of that was on OCLC number, which is really a pretty reliable way to do it. About another 15% was ISBN, and the rest kind of fell into the UPC, serials kind of number territory. Almost negligible those were. And so that data is now in the test server. I haven't been able to look, one-to-one to make sure this is really very clean. We did a little bit of that beforehand, but that's the project for the next week. But it worked really, really well. And so the remaining 4,000 is really a drop in the bucket. Well, the team will examine them, but I'm pretty sure that we are going to have pretty much day one clean database, so with very few duplicates, except for the ones that remain from the previous information. So it was pretty cool, and I'm pretty happy with that. And it's sort of a template we might be able to use in the future. Part of the reason we were able to do that is because Green Hills data is incredibly clean, which is pretty amazing. Considering when I talked to them, I said, catalogs for you. They said, we all kind of do it. Like, as a cataloger, I was like, oh god, but their data is very clean, and it's they don't do anything crazy with local subjects, local notes. It's like bog standard, very nice cataloging, which was why this was possible, because we don't need to bring in marked data that is in their system or anything like that. Not that we couldn't do it with this process, but we didn't have to. So it was pretty neat. The other things, if I can just take the stage a little longer, there's just a couple of topics I wanted to bring up. Catalogers, we sit in our offices. It's nice to be in front of everyone and sort of talk about what we've been doing this year and what we're going to be doing next year. We were talking about OCLC and World Share and all this stuff. So I wanted to talk about a little bit of the work that we've been doing there. We had a reclamation project this year. We had to do it after the migration. To get everybody's OCLC holdings synced to the new joined database, which is now complete, just recently completed. So we have OCLC holdings up to date, which is great. And so we're going to get back on our regular monthly schedule of processing with the Mark of Quality, who's the vendor who manages our OCLC Holdings maintenance for us. So January, we will send, is the next month that happens. So I don't know if anybody's aware, but Mark Polity, who we've been depending upon for years, and who many libraries in Illinois and consortia in Illinois depend on as well, are retiring in July after many long years of service. And so we're sort of at this stage where we need to find a way to manage this ourselves, and it's not really that easy to do. So we have a meeting tomorrow, actually. We're meeting with, John and I are meeting with a number of representatives from other Illinois consortia. Prairie Cat, RSA will be there, CCS, I don't remember all of them, to sort of see if we can build a tool that will allow us to mimic what the Mark of Quality does for us. They have a system, it's called Osmosis, so we're calling this Osmosis Lite. I'm not sure what it's going to look like, but it's going to be something, and we have a deadline, so it'll be done by summer. It'll be done by summer, that's all I can say. But it'll be pretty nice, and so we're going to see what our needs are, what kind of pre-processing we can accomplish with these records, and what kind of matching we can do with OCLC numbers versus some of our records obviously don't have OCLC numbers, and there's magic the TMQ does and the OCLC does to get those matches. So we're going to sort of find where we can accomplish this by July and get something together. So that should be pretty exciting. Stay tuned for that. I mean, it's exciting for me and people like me. But, yeah. I talked about Green Hills, I talked about deduplication, and so the last thing, I just thought I'd give a little update. We're talking about BIB services going forward in 2019. We have obviously our strategic plan in the works. I have sort of a personal strategic plan for 2019 that I just sort of wanted to touch on. We had a cataloging advisory group meeting on Friday, and the phrase that I kept saying out loud was, it's 2019, let's deal with this. It's 2019, let's make this work for us. I don't know why it's 2019 coming out of my mouth, but it sort of inspired me. So I think 2019 in BIP services is sort of going to be for us like a back to basics, re-examining how some of the things that we've always done work and whether they're actually working for us. SWAN, cataloging at SWAN, especially for some of the new 19 who came in, they had to learn a little bit of what we do and how to sort of fit in with our workflow. And everything changed as well. We've gained so many new cataloging libraries. For example, for the past 6 months, my team has been doing almost half the pre-cat processing they usually do, overlaying the brief records, and yet the numbers are still going down, which is amazing to me, just because of the contribution of this huge pool of catalogers. So it's given us time to sort of sit back and like, okay, what do we want? So there's things like, how do we track what needs to be overlaid? How do we track who's edited what? How do we deal with CD-DVD combo packs? That's what I mean, DVD Blu-ray combo packs. And all of these things, just to sort of get the gears that make cataloging at SWAN work like oiled up, and maybe take some stuff out or simplify. And it's also going to be a reevaluation of how we do format. Tara was talking about the the enterprise usability test, which some of the things that are being requested may require us as the catalogers to really reevaluate how, the data behind all of that as well. So, yeah, bit of navel gazing, a bit of reinventing the wheel maybe, and hopefully simplifying. And yeah, are there any questions on any of that? Sort of talk really quickly through it all. Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Any questions from the packet about any of the activities that have gone on? You've got SWAN team members here, got the board here. Edith.
In one of the reports, you mentioned that you found that you are working on the review of whole configuration to determine if most efficient selection of available items selects home library for fulfillment. Can you just give me a status, like where are you at in that process?
We had examples of where it did not work as expected. We are hoping to get our Azure migration in Green Hills done, and that is one of our projects that is mentioned in our objective one of the strategic plan, one of our technical objectives. So we don't have a lot other than example cases right now. We have it on the agenda to talk with our Cersei Dynex consultants about reviewing how other consortium have their host configuration done. That's where we are right now.
As part of this, Edith, I've reached out to, since there's a good network of Cersei Dynex Symphony consortia that meet annually, I've reached out to the CleveNet consortium as well. We have a list of topics that we think are common between the two consortium that we think would be important to dig into, and the holds configuration and processing is one of them. So I like that consortium just from the standpoint is that they're relatively the same size as us, the activities around that same size, the advantages that they've been on Symphony probably about 13 years. So they've had a little bit longer time to sort of kick the tires and work on things. The advantage they have in talking to us is we've done a lot of the new stuff, with Open Athens and such. So they're curious about that. So this is part of I think that goes into the plan of, working collaboratively, not just with our members, but also with some of our other consortia. Good question. Yes.
So on page 41, where you're talking about the visits that you and Dawn made out to some of the new libraries, I just kind of was struck by the comment. Several of the libraries you visited have commented on SWAN library practice and restricting holds on new materials. So it seems like that wasn't standard protocol for the Magic and Link libraries, and that there really isn't a universal practice around how long things remain new. Now, as a library that puts things on new because our patrons, want the book on the shelf when they think of it, I didn't know, are you going to come up with, and I know that this is very hard, it's something that we've dealt with for many years on, recommendations or anything on those, or is that was just a comment and it's not going anywhere?
Well, I think in terms of what I do as an executive director and as goals that were set for me by the board in terms of doing these visits is to go out, find out what libraries are saying, observing about SWAN, and this is one of the things that was definitely shared from the 19 libraries that came from Link and Magic, because of maybe their consortia size or just the fact that those directors all came to a single agreement. They were all making sure that all their new items were not restricted to just their patrons. So they're definitely seeing, now that we're in SWAN, that practice isn't necessarily working. So I think that they're struggling. I think I shared, Kevin's here from Messenger. You've been trying to, you and your staff are trying to get your head around this. What do you do? Do you set some aside for new, for my patrons, and then new that can be shared with the rest of the consortium? Am I right?
Right, that's correct. Yeah. I think it's just an observation of our staff, as part of Magic that's gone and done. But I think all of us in Magic have agreed that any one of our new items could go out as long as it's on the shelf. Our patrons still receive top priority if those are reserved for them. But we're finding that even now a lot of our new items are going out to libraries, which we don't mind. But when we try to request an item, we see that's sitting with another library, those can't go out because they don't allow that.
Right, so really the only way for it to work is if everybody let go.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And that's not something that I'm saying would be mandated, but I would say that would be something that we would really want to incorporate into parts of the strategic plan, tactical plan. Is when do we have these discussions? Hey, it's going to be 2019.
Right. Well, we don't have to have it today.
No, I know.
I just kind of, I'm always kind of looking at why we do the things that we do.
Yeah.
And maybe it doesn't make sense
Yeah, I think that was something that we laid out is when we were talking about the libraries coming in, it was going to be an infusion of also, new ideas on both sides.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? Thank you. Those are good ones. Any online, Stephen? No? Well, I think in terms of what we're looking at, I mean, you've heard a lot from the SWAN staff, SWAN team in terms of the cloud infrastructure, Green Hills. One of the cool things we're working on behind the scenes is an automated delivery label. I think that was noted in there. So this is part of just doing, I would say, work that it would probably fit well under the objective 2, which is, rather than sitting and waiting, being like, when is that delivery label going to arrive in Symphony workflows? We just decided to find a way to write our own, even though it may not be part of the ILS proper. We're looking at a way of can we have a web page that library staff go to, has a field to scan barcodes, and then it generates a label. I mean, those are a lot of things that we still need to kick the tires on. I mean, it's in a real beta phase, just behind the scenes. Yeah, we're kind of using it for stuff that we process in our own office. Dawn has a growing wallpaper of all the versions of the label as we've worked and revised it. So at some point, you want this to go to pilot, right?
Yeah, and Dog at St. Charles got it started.
Yeah.
So, Ruby worked with Doug, took it the next step, and now he's working with Doug to get St. Charles testing the new label. I just talked to Cindy. She's going to be another pilot. So, yeah, we're anxious to get it out there. Documentation will be on the new website.
You've heard about catalog deduplication, how that's going along. Scott, I don't know if you touched on anything more about serials and acquisitions. I had to step out for a minute.
Sorry?
Is there anything you want to say about, that was some work that had started. Is there anything more to share? I know there's been some initial talk about doing some work with serials and AC.
Yeah, we have cleanup ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of, we're kind of halfway through it. We sent out for serials in particular, a document to each library saying, this is the stuff that you may not have on your shelves anymore. It's just, there's been a lot of weird suspect bibliographic data that's been hanging around for a while. So we just had all of the libraries evaluating that. And a lot of them are coming back saying, it's all legit, leave it, so great. But a lot of them are saying, yeah, we were able to delete a lot of these items, and thank you for that. And there's a similar process going on with the serial control data. The serial control records can prevent things from being removed from the system if they're sitting there. They kind of lock things in. It's just a quirk of the Symphony database. So that's ongoing. Acquisitions data I can't speak as well to.
Okay.
It's more, do you have a team?
I do know that with Blue Cloud Analytics, the collection management, that was something that we're looking at additional reports that are specific to collection analysis. Am I right, Dawn? That was something that we were looking at?
Yeah, we've developed some collection analysis reports.
Yeah. Of course, you've heard one of our most recent usability study reports. We're looking to continue that with our Discovery User Experience group. We already got the okay to move forward with mobile, so we'll be working on that. And of course, I'm working with management team and SWAN staff and the board. We'll finish up our strategic plan and have that ready, the tactical plan for you to see. Coming up at that committee of the whole meeting, we'll be looking at our FY20 budget and your membership fees. So it's at that committee of the whole meeting, barring that we're able to keep that date and location in the afternoon. The suggestion we had moved to the afternoon is a good one. We'd be talking about the plan and budget in tandem for that meeting, and then heading towards our March meeting, we'll be able to really take evaluation of everything that we've gotten done over this last quarter with our plan, everything that we want, looking forward for the rest of 2019 and beyond. So very excited. I think you got a chance to see all the SWAN staff. You probably haven't had a chance to maybe meet them at a quarterly meeting. I'd like to keep doing that. So other questions for the board or announcements? Usually this is a chance for everyone to announce things as far as ILA activities, other things you're involved in.
Thomas Ford will be closed from January 7th through January 19th. So. David.
For those who may know my Deputy Director, Jim Madigan, he is retiring. His last week with us will be the first week of February, and we have a public celebration planned for the afternoon of Sunday, February 3rd at the Oak Park Library. He's been there for will have been there for 25 years.
Anything else? Charity, you guys are closed, right?
Yes, LaGrange is closed. Currently, we closed on Monday. We will reopen on Wednesday, December 19th.
Anything else?
More facility work, right? Yeah.
Okay, our next meeting for the board is Friday, December 21st. The next committee of the whole meeting, it's going to be an important one. It's budget and strategic plan. That's February 5th, probably in the afternoon. And then Thursday, March 7th is the next quarterly meeting. Have a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.
Happy holidays.